Welcome to the Obsessed with Real Estate show. I am your host, Alana George, and I am obsessed with real estate. I have a great show for you. This episode is for anybody interested in unlocking their full potential, performing their best, and actually achieving their goals. I interviewed today Denny, a high performance coach and author of the High Performance Playbook. I had a great time picking his brain, not just about him, but about his techniques for getting people to perform at their highest. We dive deep into how to supercharge productivity. I took lots of notes. I'm implementing this technique into my schedule this week, and I mean, fingers crossed, I'll let you know how it goes. We also talk about an array of topics, including what is a high performance coach and how to get your spouse on board with you becoming a high performer and how to set up your week for success. He really gave us a tangible step-by-step 1 hour Sunday planning session to set you up to hit your goals. This is even deeper than what I normally do. I took lots of notes and I'm really excited to implement everything he said on this call today. So let's jump into the interview. Great. I am here with Denny, and he is a high performance coach for CEOs, investors, and business leaders. He's also the author of the High Performance Playbook, How to Win at the Game of Life. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Cool. So it's a little bit self-serving that I asked you to be here. There is a real show, but I thought when trying to pick guests, like who do I want to talk to, right? And a high performance coach is definitely up there. I feel like I would label myself as, a high achiever, somebody that needs to be in high performance mode. The majority of time being that I have lots of spinning plates, kids, real estate, sales business, investments, this, that. So I appreciate you being here. And I have a lot of questions for you, and hopefully you can give me and our listeners a lot of tangible things we can take away from this and implement into our lives and our businesses ASAP. Does that sound like something that you're game for?
I am totally game for it. That's the beautiful thing of podcasts is you get to interview fun people. I have a podcast as well, and I do the same thing. Who can I talk to? So yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Awesome. Well, give us a quick plug for your podcast. I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, it's a complicated name. It's called the Denny Podcast. Just my name. And so it's all about personal development, personal growth.
Okay, so that sounds amazing. The Denny podcast. Is Dell short for anything?
It's short for Delbert. So there's not too many Delberts that are out there, and there's probably a reason for it. So yes, it's short for Del or Delbert. Yeah.
Delbert, like Albert, but Delbert. Oh, wow.
Delbert. Yeah.
No,
There's
I've
not
never
too
heard of that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, there's not too many of us that's out there. And to go a little bit further, I'm actually the third. So there's a few more Delbert Denny's out there. My father and my grandfather are also Delberts as well. But there's no fourth, if you're wondering.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it ended with you.
It did with me. Yeah, it stopped right there.
I feel like that's really common. And now we're on a total tangent. But going into right up, I just had a son. You had a son last year. So I've read a bunch of baby naming articles and everything. I haven't come across Delbert, but Dell is a really cool name. I feel like the thirds, it usually ends there. That's what I was going to say, is that I find everybody who's a third, it stops. There's no fourth.
Yeah, I saw that trend as well. I thought about it, but I was like, I think three is good enough. I think we're gonna stop while we're ahead.
So Dell, tell us, what is a high performance coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a high performance coach, the best way I can say it, it's like a life coach for business professionals. It's like a life coach on steroids. And so, what I do is I focus on high performance habit, clarity, energy, courage, productivity, influence. And if I could kind of wrap it up into a quote, I love Tony Robbins. I think everybody loves Tony. He's got some great quotes out there. And he has got a really great one that says, success is 80% mindset and 20% mechanics. And so that's more or less what I do is I focus on the 80. The other 20% is what you do for a living, right? Whether you're an agent or a real estate investor or you're a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist, that last 20% doesn't really matter too much. What matters most is that 80%, really what goes on between your ears. And so that's what I focus on is, are you being the best version of yourself? Is your mindset where it needs to be? It's keeping people accountable, it's challenging them, it's showing them their blind spots. And so I work with a lot of real estate investors, I work with a lot of agents, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, making sure what goes on between the ears is what needs to happen, it needs to be a high performing mindset.
That makes a lot of sense. Right off the bat, you wouldn't think that the same coach could coach leaders in so many different industries. But as you said, the majority of being a leader or being a successful person in any field is mindset. So I definitely relate to that. It makes a lot of sense. How did you become a high performance coach? Is this something you dreamt of doing as a kid?
Not one bit. Not one bit. So it's another great question of, how did I become a coach? And really it came through just me wanting to get better myself. I'm from Indiana. I grew up in a small town in Shelbyville, Indiana. It was this little farm town. For the people that have seen the movie Hoosiers about basketball, I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was from the 90s maybe. But it was like this little town, just like in the movie, where it was not very many stoplights, cornfields, the typical Midwest place. And growing up, I had big aspirations, I had big ambitions, and I wanted to be better. Like that's what I want to be. I wanted to be the best version of myself. And growing up, when I turned 16 and 17 years old, I started reading personal development books and listening to tapes. I don't know if anybody remembers listening to cassette tapes, but I was listening to cassette tapes and I was trying to be better. And so I started taking seminars and taking classes and I started doing all these things for myself. And then through the years, people would naturally come to me with their problems. I'm like, hey, I went through that same thing. I read this book. This is how I solved that problem. And so the things that I learned for myself eventually turned over to helping other people, which it turned into a whole coaching practice that I have today. And so it's been an awesome ride. It started off as just helping myself, and I learned that I could help other people, and it's been a great journey.
Well, that sounds like a really great journey. I want to find out more though, because you have this overwhelming feeling of wanting to be better and the best version of yourself and be bigger. But where did that even come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think all of us kind of has this underdog story within us. I grew up and when I was 9 years old, my father went to prison. When I was 9 years old, my father received a 40-year prison sentence. And 40 years to a 9-year-old boy seems like a whole lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that situations like that can either do two things. It can stop you in your track, or it can be a catalyst to propel you forward. And so I knew at 16 years old that the path I was going down was probably the similar path that my father was on. And I realized I didn't want anything to do with that. I wanted to do something much better than where he was at. So that's why I worked my butt off. I knew like I had two paths. I could go down this path, which wasn't a good path, or I could go down this path, which had a lot more ambition, a lot more promises down that road. And so that's really probably what triggered all of us today.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I kind of figured like that much motivation at a young age in this direction, there had to have been some kind of pain point there. I don't know exactly the way it's worded, but the majority of people will move away from pain faster than they all moved. So that makes a lot of sense. You saw that and thought, that's not what I want, and started some self-assessment and some education of how to live a better life, right?
Absolutely. The thing, it's interesting. We've all gone through hard stuff. Like we've all gone through our trials. We may not be born into the greatest circumstances, and that's not our fault. But what is our fault is how we end our lives. It's how we lead from there. And that's the most important thing. So for anybody that's listening to this, it's good to remember that it's what you were born into is not your fault. But how
Mhm.
you end this life is definitely your fault,
Yeah, it's
for good or
definitely.
for bad.
Your responsibility. At least. I
So
love that. I love that quote because a lot of people will live in the past and this happened to me and this is why I'm like this, but take no responsibility for healing from that or from taking a different path. So good for you. I appreciate you sharing that, how you became this, high performance coach. Take us, what is your career like today? And then I've got a lot more questions for you. So what are you doing?
so what am I doing now? So I coach a lot of business leaders, dentists, doctors, very high performers. And so I've been on Zoom calls all day long today. And so I get to coach a lot of people through different aspects of their lives. There's different high performance habits that I focus on. And so, like, for example, influence is a big one right there. And so, like, for example, earlier today, I was working with an investor who has a computer programming background, and having that engineer type mind, they're not the biggest when it comes to persuasion and talking to people and presenting. And so it's things like that that we work on, is how do we persuade better, how do we present clearer, how do we get our slide deck to be converting where investors want to invest with you, right? So little things like that. So my day is filled with phone calls and Zoom calls. That's about it.
Coaching high performance individuals. Can anybody be a high performer? What's the qualification?
I think anybody can be a high performer. I really do. Now, there's going to be different levels of it, right? We may not be Elon Musk, right? But we can be the best version of ourselves, and that's just working on ourselves. First off, as a high performer, you have to have clarity. Clarity is the number one high performance habit. You think about any great leader, whether it's Elon Musk or it's Steve Jobs or whoever it might be, they're clear about their purpose. They're clear about where they're going and how they're going to get there. And so, as a high performer, it may be a mother. Like, we don't have to run Tesla. Our clarity might be is we need to have a family unit that is happy and healthy. And if we're clear about that and we're achieving that thing, then that's a high performance person right there. So it's having clarity about who you are, what you want to do. But then there's other areas of your life that you should be taking care of yourself as well, like your health, right? We can't sustain high performance if our health isn't where it needs to be. So it's taking care of ourselves. It's being productive. We have to be efficient. We have to set our goals. So our goal as a family might be to have dinner every night. That's our goal. And so we put it in the calendar. We're nice and productive with it. But we have to have influence as well. And so the influence may be persuading our children to clean up their room because they want to do that thing. Or persuasion might be an investor trying to persuade people to invest in their deals. So it's all these little habits, but are you living up to the measure of your creation?
Mm.
That's really what it is. So we may not be created to be the CEO of Tesla, but it may be to be a mother, maybe to be a father, maybe to be the best real estate agent in California, right? We all have this thing that we have created clarity for, and are we going towards that thing and are we sustaining it? So certainly anybody can be a high performer.
That's really powerful. So what do you see that stops people from becoming the best versions of themselves?
It's doubt and fear. It's what goes on in their mind. You think about any of the high performance habits and you flip it around, that's what prevents people from becoming a high performer. Clarity being the number one high performance habit is key. I'll kind of show the flip side of this. I used to speak a lot on stages. And so I'm 40 years old now, but by the age of 34 years old, I flew over 1,000,000 miles with Delta because that's how often I was speaking on stage somewhere. And there was this one part of my presentation, I would always ask this loaded question. I would always ask, if I gave you $1,000,000, what would you do with it? And people would shout out different things. But I knew someone was going to say travel, and I would jump on that, like, perfect, travel. Where do you want to travel to? And they would just kind of look at me like a deer in headlights. I don't know. I just want to travel. And I would say, well, you travel to my seminar. Do you feel your life is fulfilled? And I'd get like a little nervous chuckle out of them, right? But the teaching lesson was the number one reason why people don't get what they want is because they don't know what they want. They never defined it for themselves. And so that's really what stops people from becoming high performers, is they haven't got that clarity that they need. And so one of the things that I would ask anybody to do if they want more clarity in their life is to create like a vision board. I know it sounds hokey and whatnot, but vision boards are powerful because it creates clarity on the things that you want out of life. And it also creates clarity on the things that you don't want from your life. And as a coach, the things that I ask is, let's say I wave a magic wand, and 10 years from now, you have everything it is that you want out of life, right? You hit the lottery or you're an investor, you have all the passive income coming in that you want. What does your life look like then, right? Where do you live? Do you live on the beach? Do you live in the mountains? What car do you drive? What charities are you giving back to? What does your day to day look like? And so you start crafting out this picture of what you want your life to be. And Stephen Covey said it best. He says, begin with the end in mind. So when we have our vision board, we're painting that picture of where we want our life to be headed to. And then once we know the destination, now we can start creating the steps to get there. And so that's one of the powerful things of creating a vision board, just it creates that clarity around the life that we want to build. And we can be intentional about our life as opposed to being reactive.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I too struggle with that. I mean, I've got my vision board by the bed. I got my husband to make one, my 3-year-old made one, but getting that picture together sometimes is difficult, right?
It is. And one of the things I would challenge it, and I don't know if you did this with your husband or not, or with your family, but for anyone that's married or has a partner, I would challenge them to do the vision board together. Like that's key right there.
Yeah.
Because where some people can go wrong is they create this vision board and they leave their spouse out of it. And there's no buy-in from their spouse. But when you sit there together with your spouse or your loved one and say, all right, honey, what is it that we want from life? Like, let's build our lives together. You know, he or she might say something that you had no clue that they wanted from life. And it's a great
Yeah.
communication tool. So great family home evening that you can do with the kids. Let's have this family night together. Let's go crazy. What do we want from life? I want to go to Disney. Perfect. Let's put it on the vision board.
Yeah, it's great. It was the first time in this past year or so that I've created a vision board with my husband, and there was like things that I hadn't thought that he wanted or he brought up that I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't even thought of that or I forgot about that." And then he got to copy some of mine too because he was, a copycat and got to print off the same pictures that I was already using for mine. So
Beautiful.
easy for him too.
Nice. Exactly.
So basically, so what stops people is what you're saying, just to recap, is mostly fear. And then to overcome is the opposite, or just to get laser focused.
Well, that's a great thing. So, fear, let's talk about fear, for example. Fear is just really the fear of the unknown. So, whenever we fear something, it's just because we don't have education towards that thing. And it may be, think about being an agent, for example. When you went through real estate school and you started, before you even got to real estate school, you're thinking about becoming an agent. It may have been scary to think about showing houses to someone. What do I say? How do I fill out the paperwork? What if they ask this question? What is escrow? Like all these things can seem overwhelming. It's just because we don't know what it is. But what happens is whenever we're fearful of something, the best thing to do is get educated. That's number one. So the more education that we have, our confidence goes up and our fear goes down. But the
Mhm.
second part of that is we have to get the education, but then we have to take action as well. So education is great, but applied knowledge is so much better.
I agree. So let's talk about getting spouses on board. What have you seen as far as spousal support with a high performer? How much spousal support do they need? What's the dynamic there?
That's a great question. And it's interesting when people get into personal development and personal growth and they are high performers. A lot of times they feel like they're pulling their spouse along. And I see it happen a lot. And sometimes that can be a frustrating point of the high performer. It's like, how come my spouse doesn't want to read books? How come my spouse doesn't want to go to this conference? Like it drives them nuts, drives them absolutely bonkers, right? It happens all the time. So give yourself a little bit of the grace, so to speak, when it comes to that. I would say just like a parent or a loving spouse, you can't force anything upon anyone. And there's a great quote, and I believe it was Galileo that said this: you can teach a man nothing, you can only help him to find it within himself. And that's key right there,
Hmm.
because one of the things that I do as a coach is I ask a lot of questions, because questions help draw that out of someone. I had a speaker coach a long time ago, and he gave me this great advice from speaking on stage. He said that instead of telling people what to do, you ask questions and elicit the response out of them. Because when you tell people, it's debatable, but if they say it, it's gospel. So,
Mhm.
like, for example, if I said the sky is blue, someone in the audience might go, well, no, it's not. There's molecules in the air. It's actually green and da, 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 right? There's always that person. But if you ask the crowd, what color is the sky? And they say blue, well, there it is, right? It's true because they said it. And to bring that full circle, it's the same thing for our spouse. Like, we can't tell them, we can't beat it upon them, but we can ask them questions and help lead them to personal growth or lead them to being more productive or lead them to a better health, whatever it might be. And so being able to get good at questions is really important. So it may be tough as a high performer not having your spouse on board, but you can set the example and you can ask certain questions to help get them, bring them up a little bit. But give yourself some grace if your spouse isn't at that level of support that you want.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is questions that lead your spouse to a certain place, that's sales, right? So we learned that in real estate sales is a series of questions and not statements. So it's a bit of persuasion, it's a bit of influence, like you were already talking about. So I just have to figure out the right questions. I mean, the listeners, if they needed their spouse to get on board, just needs to figure out what questions. And I'm trying to think of what are some possible examples, but digging
Well,
into like their
I,
why, right?
and we also have to think about persuasion, like use that word persuasion. It's not a dirty word. Some people think it is, sells. It feels like a dirty word sometimes, but we're always persuading. And the thing about persuasion is it's a two-way benefit, it's mutual. And a lot of times it gets this context of coercion. Now, coercion, it's a one-way transaction. Like, coercion is like you go to Honest Bob's used car dealership, he sells you a limit of a car, they make a great commission, you're stuck with this bad car, right? That's coercion.
You're talking about coercion and the difference between the two.
Yeah, so coercion, I can kind of start from the beginning if that helps, if you want to cut it or whatnot.
Yeah, we'll just edit this together.
So when we think about persuasion, use the word persuasion, right?
Yeah.
Persuasion is, it's important to know that persuasion is a two-way street and it's mutually benefiting. That's the key to understand. And then you have coercion, which is a one-sided transaction. And some people think they can be synonymous, but they're not. They're two different. And we have to get away from coercion and we have to focus on persuasion where it's mutually benefiting. And so as you're asking your spouse questions, it's because you want both to rise up together. You're not trying to
Right.
coerce them into doing something, but you both want to be better as a result of these questions. So again, give yourself some grace as, hey, I'm not trying to coerce my husband or spouse to do this thing, but I'm trying to make sure that our family is happy together. So we're always persuading, whether it's our spouse, our kids, our investors, our clients, the person that's checking us into the hotel to get the upgrade, we're always persuading.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. The difference between the two. I hadn't really thought of it like that or been able to pinpoint the difference, but you're right. Sometimes it does feel that way, like as if you're convincing somebody to do something that they wouldn't otherwise want to do. Sometimes it's just leading them.
It is. It's like persuasion. For example, with when it comes to real estate investing, let's say multifamily deals, we are scared to ask someone to raise capital with, like maybe it's a doctor friend, right? I feel that it's a mindset shift of like, I'm begging for money. But persuasion is great because we can shift our mindset and as we're giving them an opportunity to make more money on their investment. They put in savings, make 3%, or they can maybe make 10%, right? But it's a little shift because both are benefiting. They are making a better return, but we're also getting a better deal as well because we're able to invest in the property. We might get a GP position or whatever it might be, but both parties are winning because of that. So persuasion is key, whether it's in our family or business. It's important to persuade, but the key thing is making sure that everybody benefits.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It comes to mind. So this is a conversation we have on my team when it comes to feeling like we're salesy, right? Which would be more coercion from what you're saying instead of persuasion, where if a client works with us, it's in their benefit because we're actually caring and we look out for them and they'll get either a better deal on the buy side or make more money on the sales side. So it's in their best interest to work with us as professionals. Whereas if we didn't knock on that door or make that phone call and they went with somebody that maybe didn't have their best interest in mind, we'd be doing them a disservice by not at least have tried to help them.
Exactly. You're like a person that's standing on the shore. There's someone drowning in the water. You have the lifeline right here, and you're yelling at them, "Take the life raft. It will help you."
Yeah.
That's that's persuasion right there, and that's
Yeah.
exactly it. If we just change our perspective of it is in their best interest to work with us, that's the mindset shift.
That's great. I want to talk a bit about your book and maybe go into what listeners and readers can expect from the High Performance Playbook. What kind of already talked about what you're about, what you talk about, but give us an overview of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a book about a year and a half ago. You can see that right there, the High Performance Playbook. You can find it on Amazon. But what it's a very easy read and it's very tactful. Like you can use this, you can jump around anywhere. I wanted to create a book where you take all the fluff out and you focus on the stuff that matters, right? So for I coach a lot of people. And so when it comes to clarity, vision boards, how to do your calendar, how to set up tasks, how to be a leader, like it's very step by step. And so it's a really easy read, but it's designed for you to be a high performer, take the fluff out and just say, hey, these are the exact steps I need to do to get me there. So I show you how to do a vision board. I show you how to be that leader. I show you how to be more productive, how to have a better morning. So it's just a bunch of cool personal development stuff combined in this really short, easy read.
So I have not read it yet. I wish that I could have read it before hopping on here, but I will. I did read the reviews and the back, and a lot of people did comment on Amazon that it was straight to the point, which I super appreciate as somebody that reads and listens to a lot of self-help books. When the beginning is just the philosophies for chapters about why I should be a high performer, it gets very mundane and very old very fast. So I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to it. There are some topics in there that I feel like I and our listeners would benefit from. And you piqued my interest when you were talking about scheduling and calendars and prioritize. So how do you recommend somebody set that up? Calendar priorities, whatever it is that you just said. Let's circle back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is some ninja skills right here. So I've got this dialed in. I love teaching this because this is a game changer for anybody that wants to be productive. So the first thing is we have to think about how we schedule our day. And where a lot of people go wrong is they have this really long to-do list. Have you ever experienced that before? Like this big to-do list, everybody, right? People have like 10 things to do on that to-do list. And this is what happens. Either A, you see that to-do list, it's overwhelming, it's big, and you don't do anything, right?
Mhm.
Or B, you do maybe 3 out of the 10 things, but then you
Mhm.
feel like a failure because you missed 7 of them, right? So
You
you
go
create
through and just do the easy ones.
you do the easy ones, and then you have all these like big things, and it's still like you're stressed out looking at it. Or C, like you do all 10 things the first day, you do 10 things the next day, and then you're burnt out and you don't do anything for the next 2 weeks. Right. So where I found the sweet spot in setting up our day is starting with 3 tasks. We have 3 things that we focus on, and 3 is the magic number. And so how we prioritize these tasks are 3 ways. So the first one is called a needle moving task. This is a high priority task. This is a task that is going to get you closer to your 90-day goals. And so I'm a big proponent of setting quarterly goals. And so this is something that's going to get you closer to that. So, like, for example, a needle moving task. Let's say my 90-day goal is an investment property in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, that's my goal. I want to be in an investment property in Atlanta, Georgia by the end of 90 days. So a needle moving task for tomorrow might be, well, I need to call a broker in Atlanta to introduce myself. That's going to get me closer to my 90-day goals. It's an action step. So that's the first task that we're going to do. It's a very high priority task. Then we have 2 other tasks, and I call those secondary tasks. These are medium to low priority tasks. These are stuff that needs to get done, but the world's not going to fall apart if we don't get it done. So this could be getting the oil changed. This could be going and getting your marketing flyers printed out, whatever it might be. So it still needs to get done, but the world's not going to fall apart if we don't get it done. So that's how we structure a day, more or less. Now, here's where we take it to the next level. A lot of people set tasks. A lot of people set lists. They might do it in the morning. They might do it the night before. My challenge to you is to do it on Sundays for the entire week. So this is where you take your efficiency to a whole nother level, is where you have a weekly planning session. And so my challenge to you is to carve out 60 minutes. Make this almost like a religious thing that you do every week. Like that's your first time block, is to schedule weekly planning. So schedule 60 minutes. And then what you're going to do is, this is a 3-step plan for weekly planning. So your first step is to get your calendar out, and you're going to brain dump on your calendar. Put everything that's coming up. If you're an agent, you have an open house on Saturday from 9 to 12 or whatever. You might have meetings. You might have a kid's soccer game. You might have a doctor's appointment. You may have these things. And I want you to put it on your calendar. That's the first thing. Also put in travel time, right? A lot of time is eaten up by travel. So we want to make sure where our energy is going. So that's the first step. The second step to that is we're going to think about all our tasks that we need to do for the upcoming week. So knowing that there's 7 days per week and we're doing 1 needle mover per day, that means that there's going to be 7 needle moving activities. So I'm going to think, what are the 7 things that I need to do for this upcoming week that's going to get me closer to my 90-day goal? So I'm going to write those down on a piece of paper. I'm going to create 7. Then I'm going to think about this. I've got secondary tasks. There's 2 secondary tasks per day, 7 days per week. That's 14 secondary tasks. So I'm going to think about, okay, I need to go to the grocery store. I need to get the oil change. I need to pick up dry cleaning. I need to get that marking material. I need to write it out. Now, the third step to the weekly planning. Now we're going to combine our calendar and those to-do lists. So I'm going to think about, I look at my calendar and I see, okay, Monday is really busy. Tuesday, a little lighter of a day. Friday's very light. Saturday, super busy. So I'm going to look at the flow of my week with how much time is demanded of me. And then I'm going to think about, where can I sprinkle in those to-do lists? So I might say Monday is really busy for me. And one of my needle moving tasks is to call that broker in Atlanta. That's only probably a 30-minute phone call at the most. But I know I can squeeze that in on Monday. So that's going to go on Monday. And then I might look at Tuesday, like, okay, I got to paint the living room. That's going to be an all-day thing. That's going on for next Sunday morning, right? I got all kinds of time. So the third step is to sprinkle in your 1 needle mover per day and the 2 secondaries. And so what that does is, by the end of our weekly planning session, we have our calendar laid out and we have a plan of action with our 3 to-do lists, our 3 tasks. So by the end of the week, you have nearly 21 tasks done. Now, you may not get all the tasks done. It happens, and you might have to carry them forward to the following week. But what happens is, when you go into your day, you have a plan of action. You have your 3 things to do. And what I like as a parent, and this has helped me out immensely, is I'm not worrying about all these things that I have to do because it's already been planned out. I hit my 3 things for the day. And when it comes time for dinner, I get to be present with my family. I'm not worried about work. I'm not worried about this and the other. I can be present and be in the moment because I've done my plan of action. I got it done. Tomorrow will take care of itself, but we're in the moment. So in essence, that's how I plan out my week. And then when it comes to quarterly goals, usually the week before a new quarter, I like to set 3 to 5 quarterly goals, like those big rocks to help move the needle. So that's it. So if you do that, I promise you, you will 10x your productivity easily.
Yeah, Dell, that kind of just rocked my world right now. So I do like a half butt version of that, as far as I plan my week and I get my tasks. I use Asana, which is great because all of my unchecked tasks I could just roll over to the next day every day. But actually coming up with the 7 needle movers ahead of time and then looking at where they fit in, instead of putting it all on a Monday. And when I don't get to it, I roll it over to Tuesday. When I don't get to it Tuesday, I put it on Wednesday, right? That's super powerful, to think of the next 7 moves to get to where I want to go. And that's really breaking down those quarterly goals, right? Wow, that's really powerful. If anyone's listening to this, and take notes, make a mental note, write it down when you pull over this, if you're driving, this plan of action for Sundays. This is amazing. This is such great content and definitely tangible. So if this is like an example of what's in your book, I recommend everybody go out and get it, because this was not fluff. this was just as your Amazon reviewers said, right?
What I walked you through was exactly what's in the book. It shows you step by step what.
That is really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So
Now,
basically,
if I can add one other little thing, another little
okay,
ninja part to it, okay? So you have your list, right? So you know what it is. The other challenge that I'd give to you is before you go to bed, I want you to look at your list for the upcoming day to what you have to accomplish. The reason for that is more or less you're solving problems. So when it comes to our mind, we have our subconscious brain and our conscious brain. Our subconscious is the most powerful part of our brain. Now, when you go to sleep, our conscious brain goes to sleep, but our brain is still active. Our subconscious continues to go. So when you look at your list the night before, you're giving your brain that much more runway to think about the solution to the problem of the next day. So when you wake up and you go to tackle your day, you're going to find that solutions come a lot easier to you because you've given your brain that runway to think upon it. So look at your list the night before.
I would think that that would like send people's minds spinning and then they'd have trouble relaxing because they're thinking about work. But you're saying that probably isn't the case.
No, just think about it's like an Olympic athlete. They run the race in their mind before they do it. And it's the same thing. Think about your upcoming day, think about the list, and just leave it alone. Go to sleep. That's it. And you're actually probably excited going into the day. Not unexcited, like I can't go to sleep, but you know that you've built momentum. Like earlier today, I knocked out my 3. I feel good. I was present with my family. Tomorrow, what do I got? So I'm going to knock that out too because I have momentum going into the day. So I haven't personally found that it keeps people up at night, but it just allows you to have those solutions the next day.
Just curious for other people listening, because I sleep like a rock just about every, because you can sleep while still nursing 3 to 5 times a night. I read on the back of your book that something about supercharging productivity. Is this how you supercharge productivity?
100%. Yep. So that's how I remain super productive. But then there's another strategy in the book too when it comes to getting those tasks done. So supercharging our productivity, there's a strategy I call it 50 and 10. And that's how I wrote the book, by the way. It stands for 50 minutes of focused effort followed by 10 minutes of rest. And
Oh,
so whenever you need to do like write a book or create a proposal or whatever it might be, my challenge to you is to set a timer on your phone for 50 minutes and do that one thing. Do not check text messages. Do not be distracted by email or anything like that. Say, okay, for 50 minutes, I will dedicate my time to this one thing. And then you'll be surprised at what you can get done in that 50 minutes when you don't constantly check those things. But when that 50 minutes is up, stop. Even if you're in the flow state, stop, set another timer for 10 minutes and relax. Check the emails, look at Facebook or whatever it is. Your brain needs this dopamine release. It needs to have a little novelty. And then when that 10 minutes is up, do another cycle of 50 and 10. Like you will be amazed at how much you can get done when you follow 50 and 10. So if you do the calendaring and the tasks and the to-do list, and then you couple it with actually the action part of 50 and 10s, you'll be so productive.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna attempt to implement that. We'll see. When I get a large chunk of time and I'm like, the sitter's here, my daughter's at school, I'm like, I have 3 hours to get all of this stuff done. I find that I try to do everything at once and then I complete like maybe one thing and get everything else half started. So this could potentially help with that, I'm assuming.
I think it will. And reach out to me if you need help. If you're like, Del, something is not clicking here, what's going on? Please reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Oh, thanks, Del. I appreciate that. You already mentioned where to buy your book was Amazon. So we'll get that link in the show notes and I have about 5 questions to wrap it up just to put a pretty little bow on it. What is your advice to new entrepreneurs, agents, investors, anyone looking to become a more high-performing individual?
I would say invest in yourself. That's the biggest thing. So there's a great quote by Benjamin Franklin that says, an investment in knowledge always the pays. And the reason why that's important is education. It overcomes fear, but also shows the way. Like as an entrepreneur, don't reinvent the wheel. Find someone that did it successfully. So don't try to be a trailblazer. find what works and copy that thing. There's so many great books that are out there. They're basically recipes for success. So read as much as you can, take as many seminars as you can, just continue to invest in yourself because that's what's going to get you ahead.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. Can you share with us something that you are obsessed with? Since this is the Obsessed with Real Estate show, what are you obsessed with?
I told you earlier, I'm obsessed with personal growth.
And I told you that was lame because
I know, obviously it is, but I would say I like to experiment with other things to see if things work. There's always like biohacking, for example, cryo and ice baths, and there's different supplements. And so when I say personal growth, it's not just the stuff that we talked about, but it's
Mhm.
the cutting edge stuff.
So what are you trying right now?
What am I trying right now?
Vitamins, or are you doing the cryo?
Yeah, I do those things. I have a supplement stack that I use, and nothing's sexy enough to talk. Nootropics are a big one. I think those are really cool to think about. Nootropics, if you've ever seen the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper, it's a great movie. I really love it. And basically, he takes a pill, and it's like he is able to become a genius all of a sudden. And nootropics kind of do the same thing. And so one of the supplements I love, it's by Onna, it's called Alpha Brain. It makes me think 5 steps ahead. It's an herbal thing, and I'm not endorsed by them by any means. I just really like the supplement. It acts different for different people. So research it, find something that works for you. There's a lot of nootropics out there. You've probably had a nootropic earlier today and you didn't know it, and it was called coffee. Coffee is a nootropic. People don't realize that. So there's a lot of nootropics that are out there that helps your brain to perform better.
That is super interesting. I'm curious because my husband was ordering something like that for a while. Is that the one that has the day pills and the night pills, or no?
Yeah, I think so. So Onna it
On
does
it.
make it. So Onna is the maker
Oh,
of
on it.
Alpha
That's it.
Brain. They have a vitamin pack, a day pack, and a night pack. So he probably uses, and I believe the day pack does have some Alpha Brain in it.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
You can get it on Amazon as well or Whole Foods. I always have to like preface this is not an MLM. There's no downline to this. I just really
Reach
like
out
it.
to Dell if you'd like to sell it.
Yeah, you can become a millionaire with this. No, I'm just kidding.
That's hilarious. Okay, yeah, thanks for prefacing that. Okay, moving on from the non-MLM vitamins. Tell us a fun fact about you, Denny. We have already learned so much, actually. But what's something that people wouldn't really know off the bat about you?
Well, I can juggle. I didn't put that in there, right? I'm a really good juggler. I
Really?
used I still could if I wanted to, but I in high school I became really good and obsessed with it, and I had flaming juggling pins.
Oh my
So I'm a really
gosh.
good juggler. So that's a side note. But another thing is I love to travel. I've been to 16 countries. I've been to all 50 states in the United States. I've been to most of the provinces in Canada. I love to travel. And on my vision board is I want to move to Paris one day. So there it is.
You and my best friend. You could visit each other.
Paris
That's
is great.
amazing. You're very clear about that. And I'm sure
It,
you're very clear on all your other states. Which one's your favorite?
Geez, that's tough. I love California. I really do. I'm in Indiana, but I used to live in Los Angeles, but California got Southern California. San Diego's a different vibe than LA. LA's a different vibe than the Bay Area. You can get a little bit of everything. And then you have a melting pot of cultures and food. I'm a foodie, so whether you want to get Chinese food or Italian food or great Mexican food, California has everything. So I'd probably say California.
Okay. I mean, I'm in California and you're probably saying that, but California is really big. So I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows that, but sometimes I talk to people from other states and they're like, oh, you lived in California your whole life. And I'm like, yeah, but I lived in Southern California and then I'm from the Bay Area, but I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains now. And it's all like so different, like geographically and population wise.
It could be its own country. I think like if California was its own country, it'd be like the number 3 country in GDP.
Yes.
Like it's a big place.
Yes. Lot of positives there. Some negatives, but cool. Cool. Now, what's next for you, Del?
Ooh, what is next for me? I've been contemplating writing a new book. I've been helping a lot of businesses that become high performing businesses.
Mm.
And I don't know if I'm ready to reveal what's next. I like to work in silence and let my
Oh.
work show itself. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, can I take some guesses?
Sure, you can.
Blink once for yes, twice for no. Are you doing a conference?
I forget which blinking us.
Okay, because you blinked like 3, 4 times. So I'm
I know. No, I'm not doing a conference.
just putting that out there into your brain that people do that. That's what popped into my head for you for what's next. But so when you coach
Maybe I should.
businesses as in like teams, putting that out there, you totally should. Teams as like business teams when you say businesses, because there's individuals and the entire company or
Through the years, I've grown a coaching practice. Not easy to do. And so when it comes to coaching people with an expertise in how to grow their business, so
Mhm.
there's that aspect. So I really nerd out on internet marketing and I really love that
Mm.
stuff. And so I've been teaching a lot of people lately how to build their own businesses that way. And that's another one. It's kind of like personal development where I stumbled upon that for myself. And then people asked me how to do it. It's been the same thing lately for this. How do you build a website? How do you do social media? How do you get clients? So there's been a little something in the back burner.
I see the glimmer in your eye that that is a little bit of what's to come that you don't want to share quite yet.
I want to make sure I get everything dialed in first before I roll anything out. Yeah.
Well, I will be very excited to see that when it does come out. Where can our listeners and watchers find out more about you, follow you along in this journey, maybe reach out regarding coaching, see if that next book comes out?
Yeah, as we know, you can find the High Performance Playbook on Amazon. I should be on Audible here soon within the next 10 days.
Are
So
you reading it?
hopefully, I did not read it. I hired a narrator for it. So that's all completed. It's waiting through the approval process. I just didn't have time to sit down and read my book. Yes, as it is. I want to be productive, so I outsourced it.
That was
Uh,
not a needle mover.
I had so many other projects I needed to get it done. So I was like, I am just going to hire someone who has a better voice than me to do it. Where else can you find me? The Denny podcast. You can listen to me there for great personal growth tips and tricks and strategies like we've talked about today. And then if you want to find out more about coaching, go to my website, delldenny.com, and you can do a free coaching session if you want to. There's a link on there to apply for that. So podcast, book, website, that's where you can find me.
Boom. Thank you so much, Dell. I appreciate your time and hopping on here and your patience. I appreciate you and I love following you and all of your posts. I encourage everybody to go get the book or wait for it to come out on Audible. That's honestly what I will probably do. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dell. Well, that was our interview. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, like, subscribe, support the show for more content like this. And if you are so inclined, I'd love a 5-star review. It'll help me in the algorithm and reach more people. That would be wonderful. If you'd like to connect with the show, feel free to go to the website, obsessedwithrealestateshow.com, where you can find all of the resources, all the book recommendations, links to those, as well as submit to be a guest on the show. You can find me on Instagram, follow, and reach out at AlanaGeorge_real estate. I'd love if you reached out and said hello. As well as if you are interested in syndications, my website, clearconnectioncapital.com, has a lot of information on what syndications are, why they're beneficial as real estate investments. So check that out. I will see you on the next episode.